Hey everyone, welcome to Goat and check it out. Today you're going to learn how to do this. Here is an Excel sheet. I have a start and end date. I click Create Gantt. Ooh, cool. Look at this. And the groovy thing about this is that I can do almost as far as I want. So if we want to go through the end of the year, yes, and look at this. The first part of a Gantt, which is the header. So this is part one of the Gantt. Thanks so much for joining. Let's get started. This is kind of complex, and I will share the link to the file also with the Google Drive. If you don't trust downloading the file, you can. I'll also post the plain text in the description below. Will be the link for the file and a link for the plain text code. It doesn't take a lot of code to do this, but it is complex, so we'll need to walk through it. So for the first part of this setup, you're just going to need a spreadsheet that you saved as a macro-enabled file. And then you're going to want a worksheet down here called Goat Events. You can change that later as we go through the code. I'll show you, but you just want a worksheet called Goat Events. And then over in J1 and J2, you're going to want two dates, a start date and an end date. All this other stuff you can kind of ignore. I put this in here to just make it clear. And then you're going to want to add a button to your spreadsheet. You can go into developer mode, design mode. You can add a button, etc. Now, what we're going to do is walk through the code, but first, we want to figure out what exactly is going on. So let's zoom in to this Gantt, and I'm going to show you what's going on. So over here, we were able to enter a start date and an end date, and then a Gantt will show it. Now, what is a Gantt good for? A Gantt is good for showing the timelines of multiple things. So for instance, if you had a project number 1, and then you had a project number 2, etc. And then they had different events in here. This is how a Gantt would work. It would say event 1 for project 1, and then maybe project 2 has an event over here. And so a Gantt would let you easily see these events for various projects. And so maybe you could do something like this. Anyway, we're not going to get to this part right now, but you would see, okay, event for the project 1 and event for the project 2 overlap on this Saturday right here. So that's what a Gantt is useful for, but let's ignore these for right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to do this first part up here. It's a lot trickier than you think, but we'll walk through the code. So what you can't see here are actually fields that are the integer value of the date we're talking about, which is 4 March 2025. So all these are spaced to a default space. And so let's go and start walking through the code, and you'll learn how to build this Gantt, the first part, which is the header part, and you really need to understand how this works. So this first bit of code you're looking at is the macro behind the button that we click. So I'm just going to walk through it. First, I have some dependencies. Again, I'll post this code as either a file, or I will just give you plain text of all the code that this thing is using, so you can copy and paste the file or the code into a module yourself and run it yourself. So this part of the code is going to use these two modules. I will briefly explain those, but I've actually gone through those in other videos. I think they're also part of my Google Sheets for code, so I'll also link that below, just the Google Sheets that has the plain text for the code. So, okay, let's get started, and we're going to walk through this. So the user has clicked this button here, and then this is the code that begins to fire off. So first of all, we're going to give ourselves 3 constants. Now, 2 of these are text. That's what the $sign means after this. I could have easily said as string, but instead I just use the $sign for string, sorry, not text, a string value, which is basically text. So I have 1, which is worksheet Gantt source. That's what that means. I'm sorry, that's a Gantt sheet, Goat Gantt. That's kind of the output sheet, and source Goat Events. So that's why I said during the setup of this file, you need a Goat Events worksheet. Now, if you didn't want to have a Goat Events and you wanted to change it, you could go in here and change this constant to whatever it's looking for, or if you want to write some code to pass what sheet you want to do. But for now, we're going to keep this as easy as possible because it's going to get a little complex. Okay, our third constant is a column offset, which is an integer value, a long integer, which is the ampersand, and it's 2. And this means how many blank columns between the first column and when the days start. And what I mean by that is, let's look at our Gantt. Notice we have these 2 blank columns here. I can control that with this code. So for instance, if I go in here and I type 0 and then I run this, oh, actually I think I have to compile, I can't remember. Let's go over here. We're just going to create this Gantt over again. Notice I don't have any blank columns. So typically you want at least 1 blank column to have the name of the project or whatever you're tracking down the vertical axis here. So I'm going to go and just change this back to 1. And that way we can run this. Okie dokie. There we go. We have this thing. So let's zoom back in so we can see what's happening and we can follow this in code. Okay. Now, let's start. We've done our constants. Now we're going to give ourselves a workbook and a worksheet variable, a worksheet name, which is a string, and then a start date and an end date. So first, we have to play the what if game. So remember, in coding, I don't know if you guys have seen my other videos, you have to play what if. What happens if this is the condition when they click the button? So you have to go through all these what if scenarios. So we're going to go through some of them. So the first one is, what if the source worksheet does not exist? So again, we're looking for goat events. So this is one of the dependencies I'm using. Worksheet exists. It's just a Boolean. So if this does not exist, then we halt. We can't find the source worksheet. Again, this is kind of hard-coded, but you can modify the code as possible. Okay, so now that we know the worksheet exists, we're going to set the workbook equals the active workbook, and the worksheet equals to worksheet's source worksheet, which is that goat events. Now we're going to start the dstart range to J1 and the dstart value to range J1. So basically we have 2 date values we are setting to these 2 figures here, J1 and J2 on the actual sheet. Now, if one of those are blank, Excel will default this to 0. If either one of those are 0 or dEnd is less than dstart, so if you have your dates reversed, then it's going to give you an error message. And so let's go ahead and test that out. Let's say we did not put in for March. Problem with desired dates. So, and then what if we put 1 Jan 25? Our dates would be backwards in this instance. It's going to say, okay, you have a problem with the dates. So we need those safety checks so it doesn't try to run in reverse or any other kind of craziness. And then let's reset this, DEC 25. Okay, cool. Let's make sure it runs. Yep. Okay, so we've done that check. Our dates are in order. Now here is one, I just coded this in. You can make this a constant maybe or change it, but I limit them to 365 days. So if they accidentally put in December of 3025, it's going to stop them because it would be ridiculous and that would be too much. Okay, now I set the worksheet name, which is one of our variables up here, equal to new worksheet, which is a function that returns the name of the worksheet that you just tried to make, and you pass it the name of the worksheet you're trying to make, which is the Gantt sheet, which again is goat Gantt. And I won't really walk through this function, but it's pretty easy. So if you decide to answer no, it's basically going to error out. So for instance, if I hit no, it's going to say there's a problem creating that. So I don't, because it found goat Gantt already exists. Worksheet goat Gantt already exists, overwrite. If I hit yes, that's what that sub is doing in that code. And so again, you can check out the code, either the link for this file or the link for the plain text worksheet, and you can just look at this plain text code and see what it's doing for this sub right here, new worksheet. So if the user stops and answers no, I don't want to create the worksheet, it comes back as the word error, and that's what this is saying here. So it halts on that error. So now that we have that new worksheet, we can set our worksheet variable equal to workbook.worksheets and then our constant name, which was goat Gantt. Now, all of that is the preliminary code for getting this to work. Once we know we have our sheet, we've created over here, our goat Gantt. So when it first creates this, it's going to be blank. Now we're going to call the sub draw Gantt headers. Now this is custom code here. Maybe someone else has done it online. I'm not sure. Maybe they do it better, maybe they do it worse. I'm not sure, but this is just stuff I use. Very similar code in my databases. It's actually easier to do this in Access than it is to do this in Excel, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. So that's why I did this first part. So I've made a custom sub, and then we'll walk through this, and I'll try to explain the best I can how this works. Okay, so draw Gantt headers is going to expect a worksheet to be passed, which is the worksheet we just made up here. And then it's going to want a start dated and end date as a long, and then a column offset variable. So all I do is I convert to long the start date that we had in this prior module, the end date, and then my column offset, which is right now it's at 1. So that's what I've passed, and we get into draw Gantt headers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be flipping back and forth between, actually let's see if I can do this and resize this a little bit. That way hopefully you guys won't be, and we'll just minimize this, so hopefully we can follow this a little bit better here. Please wait. Okay, this should let us follow it. Okay, so here's what's going to go down. First, we're going to give ourselves some constants for horizontal or header, sorry. This is what this means. Long header, month offset, day name, and day num offset. So that's this right here. So my offset from the top row is 1 for my month. So you can see the top row is already used in this code. I've given myself an offset of 1 for the month name, an offset of 2 for the day, the shortened day name, which is this, and I'm sorry, which is this one, and an offset of 3 for the day num offset. Now you'll see how these come into play as we start walking through the code. I give myself then 2 constant colors, a tick-tock color. What this does is allow me to, as I switch months, the colors change. So notice March is this green and April is this kind of light gray blue. Those are these 2 colors here. If you don't like those colors, you can change these constants. And then a weekend color, I gave myself this orange. Again, this is a constant. All you have to do is find the long value of the RGB code for your color, and you can find that. And if you have any questions on how to do that, leave a comment. I'll show you how. It's really super easy. So now, after I've given myself these constants, my row offsets here, and again, I could change these just like I did the column offset in the previous bit of code. So if I wanted this to start on row 5, 6, and 7, I could just type 5, 6, and 7, and it would shift all of these down, except for this first row here, and you'll see. I give myself a btick boolean, some simple counter variables. Now these are the start and end columns absolute values. So column 1 would be 1, that would be the start column, end column would be column 2, etc. But I have to take into account my offsets. Then I have a loop month, which is going to be a number, a long day, which is basically this big value up here, the long value of this date, a month cursor left and right. So, okay, so these are my variables, and hopefully you'll see how they start to play as we start going through this code. Okay, now, first, after we've made our sheet, we activate the past worksheet, we activate. So it switches over to this. We don't have to do this, but I did, thinking I could watch it draw, but it goes so fast on this machine, I don't really get to see much of it. Okay, so we activate over here on this worksheet. Now then, what I need to do is I need to get the absolute column value of where I'm starting. So it's going to be 1, my start column, plus my past offset. My start column variable is 2. My end column is going to be the long date that I passed minus the long end date minus the long start date. So if I passed it 47,500 as my start and 47,531, if you subtract those, it would be 31, I believe. Anyway, you then have to add 1, because if I've basically passed it March 1st and March 31st, my end column, if I do 31 minus 1, would be 30, but it needs to be the 31st column. So that's why I add the 1. Then I add the offset, just like the start column. So basically my end column, if I were to come in here and type in Instead of 3 March, it would be 5 March 25. So let's run this, and you'll see. Okay, so let's zoom in here. So I took that long value 45721 minus 45719 plus 1 plus the offset, which is my end column is now 4. My start column is 2, 3, 4. Do the math, play around with it. You'll see that it works. So let's do this. Okay. Okay, now that I have my absolute start and end columns, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my range variable that I declared up here equal to my past worksheet range. Now this is a way you can set a range that kind of works like XY coordinates. So basically this looks like this: worksheet.range, worksheet.cells. This would be kind of your Y, and then this would be your column, and then row, I believe that's how that works. 1 second. So this is a way of making a range using basically XY coordinates. I think of this as the Y, it's kind of reversed, and this as the X. So let's see if we can figure out what we're doing. So we're going to set the range equal to the past worksheet range, and then we're going to start at 1, which is Y1, start column, which is, remember our start column is now 2 because we have an offset of 1 plus the offset. So we're starting here at 1, 2, and we're making the range 1 end column. Okay, so the end column, remember, is way over here. It's about 60, I believe. Maybe, I'm not sure what the end column value is. So I've set to this range, and then what I do is I do a column width of 2.5 on that range. So that's how we get our little bitty squares. And notice if we scroll past April, our squares become big again. So see, this range stopped right at the end of our desired code. Now moving forward, I have a couple of loopy variables, or just generic variables rather, that I'm using, X and Y. X is going to be kind of like a little cursor that goes left and right, and Y is up and down. So X is going to be 1 plus the column offset, which is going to be here, and Y is going to be 1. So here is where X and Y would sit right now. I also have these couple of things called month cursors. You'll see how they work in a minute. I'm going to initialize them to both start at X, which is also right here right now. My loop month is going to be the month that I'm starting on my date. So in this case, the loop month will equal 3. It's going to give you the number value of the month. So this value is 3 right now, and then long day is this right here. So the first long day is 45719 in this example. Okay, so how do we do this? What in the world is going on? I know this seems confusing, but if you want, just go through the code slowly and you'll start to understand it. So we're going to take one of our other generic variables, I, and we're going to start a big loop. And we're going to go from the start column, which is the absolute, which is currently at value 2, to the end column, which is all the way into like value 60 or whatever it is. So we're going to do 60 of these iterations. This is the main outer loop. First, I'm going to say, okay, I have a variable which is a string of day. It's going to equal left, and I have a couple of nested functions in here. If you don't know how to read these, work from the inside out. So you work from the inside out. You say, first of all, the weekday of long day, which is long day is our start, so it's a variable. The weekday would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. Then the weekday name, you have to give it the weekday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. The weekday name will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then left 2 will give you the first 2 letters of that. So this is how you get the first 2 letters of a weekday name if you pass it a long variable. So this is how this works. So this is going to be MO for Monday, TU for Tuesday, etc. So we get the 2-letter abbreviation. So we're in our big loop. Now then, we're going to draw this header information. So remember, we have our offsets up here that we set to offset 1, 2, and 3, which is row 2, 3, and 4. So first, we're going to make the first value y and x. So y is currently 1, x is currently we're not using an offset. X is also 1 plus the column offset, which is 2, kind of reversed when you use cells. So yes, our y value is 1, our x value is 2. We're talking about right here, value equals long day, which is, again, this value here. Then we're going to shift down 1 row. We're going to say y plus the day name offset, and then x equals s day. So now the day name offset is going to be here. So yes, we've set the long value, which is this one right here. I don't like that it's row 1 because we're forgetting the, I don't like this. I don't like these comments. That's what confused me. Okay. We set our day name offset, we set our day name offset to the 2-letter value of s day that we derived above. And then we're going to set the day num, which is this, which is our offset is 3, so 1 plus 3 is 4. So y 4, x is still 2, equals to the day, this is another function of long day. So this is how we get our 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, our day number up to 31. Don't confuse that with weekday, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Day is what day of the month. Okay, now then. So far in this code, we've written this block here, this block, and this block. We haven't done this one yet. Just forget about this right now. That's what kind of threw me off because these comments are off. Okay. So we've written these 3 blocks on this first part. Now, we need to do a check. If s day equals sa or s day equals su, that would be Saturday or Sunday, then we're basically going to set this range, and I just went down to 300 from y, day name offset, to 300 on the same x, which is currently 2. Interior color is our L weekend color, which is our constant up here. If you don't like the weekend color, you can change it up there and it'll change all through this code. Okay, now, so far we've written these 3 blocks. We've checked to see if it's a weekend and we've colored it. Monday is not a weekend, so we're going to move on. Now then, here's where things get a little weird. Actually, they're already weird. Here's where they get more weird. What I'm going to do as I'm going through this loop, I've written this. I've written these 3 blocks here. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add +1 to our current long date. And I'm going to check the month of that to see if the month changes. So for instance, if we were going through this loop and we were right here. Right here. This is the end of March. So we were at the end of March. I would say, okay, I'm going to add 1 before I go to my next I way down at the bottom of this code. I'm going to look at the month and see if it changes. My loop month, my current loop month, I set, remember when we first started this loop, was 3. So my loop month value is 3. Now, if the month of my current long day +1 is 4, which would be April, so it's looking at this column here and it's like, oh, okay, I went ahead one day and it is April, and that is not equal 3, or it's 4, which is April, and that is not equal 3, which is March. So what am I going to do? Okay, this gets weird. First, I'm going to move my month cursor. So imagine I had a couple of cursors over here. So let me zoom out. So far, these guys have just been sitting here because remember I initialized them when we first started the code, they were equal to X, which is 1. So they've been sitting over here. So here they are. I initialized them to be X, which is 1 plus the offset, which is 2. So these have a raw value of 2 right now. Now, what happens is I did this little check where I peeked ahead by 1 before I actually went to the next I. That actually increments I. So before I went to next I, I said, okay, if the month of whatever day I'm on plus 1 does not equal the loop month, what I'm currently on, which is what would happen if I was on March 31st, it would peek ahead. I'm here, and it would say, oh, okay, my month just changed. What's going to happen? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my month R cursor. So this is cursor right. It's going to equal I, which is where I'm at right now. So assuming I had run this loop, my cursor right would move to right here. This is I, because remember we checked I plus 1, which is April. So we move it over to I. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a range equivalent to, there we go, there's my month offset. 1 plus offset month cursor left, which remember my cursor left is over here at 2, to my cursor right. I'm going to set that range, which is this here. Now remember, when I first write this, these are individual cells. So this is where the cursor right is. This is where the cursor left is, over here. I'm going to set that range. I'm going to then, with that range, merge it. The value is going to be the month name of the loop month. Remember, we were on loop month 3. Horizontal alignment, that's just the code for center, meaning center it. Font bold equals true. And interior color. Now here's where I do an immediate if statement. If tick is true, it's going to be tick color. If tick is not true, it's going to be tock color. That's how we get our varying colors between the months. So that's what happens when I do that peek ahead, and I do it every time I'm jumping these days. Okay, so now that I've done that jump ahead check, what I would do is I would set my month cursor equal to my left cursor equal to my right cursor plus 1. So left cursor would move over here to right cursor and then plus 1. So he's now on April 1st. My right cursor now gets put even with my left cursor. And then we're out of, and then I flip tick, which the easy way to do that is to say B tick equals not B tick. So that's an easy way to flip a Boolean value. Okay, now, that was all part of the check for the peek ahead, all of this stuff here. So I increment my normal drawing cursor. So again, I jumped ahead to show you how the peek looks. Normally we've said, okay, we drew this, x equals x plus 1, long day equals long day plus 1, I increment long day, loop month equals month of long day, I increment the loop month, and then the month cursor equals month cursor plus 1. I've incremented the right cursor. Do I need to do that? I don't think I need to increment the right cursor. Oh yeah, I know why now. I think I know why. I don't even understand my own code, folks. Okay, now that's the main loop. So what we've done is we've drawn a month. Now, the problem is sometimes what if your loop ended in the middle of April? You need to catch that, because what will happen is this only checks on a peek ahead. If you ended at the very end of April or maybe in the middle, it would peek ahead and that it would never see a new month. So what would happen is without that code, it wouldn't draw April. It would not merge April. It would merge March, and then April would be individual April, which would be horrible, or maybe nothing. So what we need to do is we need to see, okay, if I, which is our big loop counter, is greater than month cursor L. So that means we've drawn out to, let's say, here. So it's greater than month cursor L. Then I'm going to set cursor R equal to I minus 1, because I is actually, so if we meant to stop on 11, I would have incremented to 12. Remember, cursor R is also incremented. So we're going to back it up. We're going to back up cursor R by 1. We're going to set the range. So this is where our cursor had stopped on our left. We're going to merge. That's going to be April. interior color, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you'll see that in action. I'll give you an example. So let's say if we stopped in the middle of this range. Yep, there we have it. See how it merges and it grabs April in the middle. If I didn't do this check, then it wouldn't work. So watch this. What happens if I comment all this goofy stuff out? Okay, that's the main loop right here. So here's the check. Let's comment this out and we'll see what happens. It's probably going to be really gnarly. So it grabs March, but because the peak ahead never changed, so now I'm in April, so it peaked ahead and it sensed April, it merged March. But then it kept going and April never changed, it just stopped. So it never ran this part of the code again. So that's why I've got to catch it down here. I've got to say, wait a minute, is our counter greater than our left cursor, which has stopped here? I'm sorry, it stopped here actually. Yes, well then I've got to catch where it's at. I've got to catch from left cursor to right cursor. So that's why we need this code here. And so let's uncomment. Why is it not? Oh wait, I'm doing the wrong thing. Here we go. And now it should work beautifully. And there we have it. Okay, I know this was super confusing. Drop a comment below if this is helpful. This is only phase 1 of this. This is how you do a Gantt chart, the beginnings of a Gantt chart in Excel. I hope this was useful. God bless. Subscribe if you aren't subscribed. Have a great day.